Frank Sinatra didn't stumble into the underworld. He was raised in it. Born in 1915, Hoboken, New Jersey, his early world was one of smoky taverns, backroom deals, and whispered transactions. His father was a saloon owner and part-time enforcer. His mother was a politically connected midwife who allegedly performed illegal medical procedures. During Prohibition, their tavern wasn't just a local watering hole. It was a speakeasy where bootleg liquor flowed and favors were traded like currency. His uncles ran illicit alcohol across county lines. His maternal grandfather came from a village near Corleone, Sicily, a town whose name would later become synonymous with mafia lore. Young Frank watched, listened, absorbed. By the time he could carry a tune, he could also carry himself like a man who understood how power really worked. Not in votes or applause, but in loyalty, secrets, and silence. The mob wasn't something Sinatra found. It was already in his blood. As Sinatra rose through the ranks of local club singers, one figure loomed larger than any record executive: Willie Moretti, a notorious mobster with close ties to boss Frank Costello. Moretti wasn't just a fan of Frank's voice, he was family, the kind of family who made things happen. He protected Sinatra from interference, opened doors that others couldn't, and cleared paths with a phone call or something more persuasive. When Sinatra signed with Tommy Dorsey's band, he unknowingly entered a devil's deal. The contract gave Dorsey 40% of Frank's lifetime earnings. Sinatra wanted out, but Dorsey refused. That's when Moretti reportedly paid Dorsey a late-night visit. Dorsey later joked, or maybe didn't joke at all, that a gun was pressed to his lips and he was persuaded to release Sinatra for just $1. It was a mob favor dressed as business. Sinatra denied the story, but Dorsey's sudden surrender told the world everything it needed to know. For anyone who's seen The Godfather, the story of Johnny Fontaine, the desperate singer who begs Don Corleone to break a contract, feels ripped from Hollywood legend.
Godfather, I don't know what to do.
But what most viewers never realized was that legend had a face: Frank Sinatra. The infamous scene with a terrified band leader and a horse's head in the bed was more than cinematic drama. It was a wink to the industry insiders who'd long whispered about how Sinatra got out of his ironclad contract with Tommy Dorsey. Dorsey's abrupt change of heart after a visit from men like Willie Moretti became folklore. Sinatra despised the Fontaine character, seeing it as a smear, but the story stuck. Art imitated life, or maybe life had imitated power. Either way, Sinatra's career was no longer just about talent. It was about the invisible hands pulling the strings.
Pull the string!
And the terrifying weight of what a favor really meant in mob terms. In 1946, while the public saw Frank Sinatra as a crooning heartthrob, behind the curtain, he played a far riskier role. He was invited to perform at the Hotel Nacional in Havana, but this was no ordinary gig. That night coincided with the infamous Havana Conference, a secret summit of the most powerful mafia figures in the world. Bugsy Siegel, Vito Genovese, Meyer Lansky, Lucky Luciano. They were all there, plotting the global future of organized crime. Sinatra's rumored job wasn't just to entertain, but to hand-deliver a suitcase filled with $2 to $3 million in cash from American investors to Luciano. Money meant to fund mob-controlled casinos, drug routes, and political bribery in Cuba. One customs agent flagged the bag, but when he saw the signature smile of Old Blue Eyes, he let it through. No questions. That was Sinatra's real superpower: charm, fame, and a smile that could carry corruption through the front door unchecked. Sinatra wasn't just another headliner in Las Vegas. He was the face, the heartbeat, the bait. Mob-backed casinos like the Sands and the Flamingo didn't just want his talent. They needed his credibility. With Sinatra performing, high rollers showed up. Senators dropped by. Movie stars flew in just to be seen at his table. But while the stage glistened, The backrooms were filled with darker dealings, money laundering, drug trafficking, political favors, all veiled behind velvet ropes and Frank's silver voice. He hosted parties where mob bosses clinked glasses with governors. And when someone owed, Sinatra might casually mention a friend who could help. The FBI knew. They followed. But Frank was untouchable. He brought legitimacy to a city built on scams and silent deals. To the underworld, he was more than entertainment. He was infrastructure, the polished veneer on a very bloody machine. And he liked it that way. The spotlight was his shield, and the shadows were home. By the 1950s, Sinatra wasn't just a person of interest. He was an obsession. The FBI had over 1,200 pages on him. They wiretapped his phones, tracked his flights, monitored his friends. He stayed at mob-owned hotels, shared dinners with gangsters, and made calls that were never recorded, but always suspected. J. Edgar Hoover considered him dangerous, not because he carried a gun, but because he didn't have to. He was the connector, the bridge between culture and crime. A man who could move crowds, influence elections, and make people disappear from his life, or the public's. The public saw the glamour, the tuxedos, the Rat Pack, the awards. But behind the curtain, he was under constant surveillance. He was never charged, but he was never cleared either. The files didn't convict him. They documented him. A life lived in a dance between applause and suspicion, between velvet ropes and steel bars, just out of sight. Frank Sinatra's ultimate power play wasn't with a record label. It was with the presidency. In 1960, he threw his full weight behind a young senator from Massachusetts, John F. Kennedy. He hosted fundraisers, rallied Hollywood, and made phone calls that only Frank could make. But the real move came behind the scenes. With pressure from JFK's father, Joseph Kennedy, Sinatra is believed to have contacted Chicago mob boss Sam Giancana. The ask? Help deliver union votes in West Virginia, a must-win state for Kennedy. The votes came. JFK won. Sinatra celebrated like he'd been elected himself. But when Bobby Kennedy, now Attorney General, declared war on the mafia, it all backfired. The mob felt betrayed, and so did Frank. He'd delivered the presidency and lost everything in return. When JFK canceled a visit to Sinatra's home under FBI advice, Frank didn't just lose a guest. He lost his connection to power. And maybe his protection. The fallout was immediate and violent. Literally. Sinatra had renovated his Palm Springs estate for JFK, added a helipad, painted rooms, hired chefs. When the president canceled last minute and chose to stay with Bing Crosby, a Republican, Sinatra went berserk. He reportedly took a sledgehammer to the helipad himself. But the damage wasn't just emotional. It was political, personal, and deadly. The mob felt used. Sinatra's usefulness as a bridge had collapsed. Rumors swirled that Giancana ordered a hit on him, aiming to silence Sinatra by destroying his vocal cords. It never happened. One story claims the mob boss heard Sinatra's recording of That's Life and got sentimental. But it underscored the danger Sinatra lived with. The people he once called friends now considered him a liability. He had flown too close to the sun. And as with all men who mingle with kings and killers, the crash was brutal. Sinatra's scandals didn't fade, they compounded. In 1963, the Cal Neva Lodge scandal exploded. Frank had part ownership of the glamorous resort in Lake Tahoe. Half celebrity getaway, half mafia den. When word got out that Sam Giancana had been spotted on site, Sinatra lost his Nevada gambling license. He had to sell his shares. The FBI tightened the noose. Surveillance increased. Old allies like Johnny Rosselli and Joe Fischetti were either dead, in hiding, or done answering his calls. Even his son was pulled into the chaos. kidnapped just weeks after JFK's assassination. Though the criminals were caught, conspiracy theories bloomed. Was it a mob warning, retribution, or just a random crime in the middle of a life defined by whispers? Sinatra never said. He didn't have to. By the late 60s, he retired. Not just from music, but from chasing the past. The spotlight had burned, and the shadows were closing in. When Frank Sinatra died in 1998, the world mourned a legend. But for those in the know, in smoky backrooms, in aging FBI offices, it marked the end of something much bigger. 7 months after his death, the FBI released its file on him. 1,275 pages of notes, phone taps, surveillance, suspicions. No charges, but no clean bill either. Just a paper trail of a man who sang to the world and whispered to its most dangerous men. To this day, historians argue, was Sinatra merely friendly with mobsters, or was he one of them? Did he use them, or did they use him?